Bit by bit, excuse by excuse, we're putting Donald Trump above the law. We are rendering indefensible conduct normal, legal, and appropriate, as though he were a king. And now, Donald Trump has been suggesting, not even subtly, that any legal action against him could result in violence.
I think if it happened, I think you'd have problems in this country, the likes of which perhaps we've never seen before. I don't think the people of the United States would stand for it.
Our former president is apparently now suggesting that if he is prosecuted, his supporters should stand up to our constitutional order and the rule of law. Stand up and, through whatever means are needed, prevent his prosecution, prevent the application of the law.
What kind of problems, Mr. President?
I think they'd have big problems. Big problems. I just don't think they'd stand for it.
It is hard to see this as anything but a direct threat to our Constitution, to our republic, and a credible one at that. One can only wonder, is this where the Republican Party will go next? That prosecution is inappropriate because MAGA will violently oppose it.
Mitt Romney's had a couple of interesting things to say in the past few hours. We'll share those clips with you in a moment. But first, Liz Cheney, who for me this Tuesday has literally buried, and when I say buried, shovel, hole, Speaker Clown Johnson.
The former president is attempting to use the threat of violence, attempting to use fear to get people to be quiet or to convince people that they shouldn't oppose him. I certainly had members of Congress say very directly to me that, you know, they believed, for example, he should be impeached, but they were afraid of the threat of violence against their family if they took such a public stand as voting to impeach Donald Trump after January 6th. And I think, again, this is a place where we really can find and should find bipartisan agreement, you know, that violence doesn't have any role in our politics. It can't. And so we've had in the past, obviously, different groups that might have tried to use violence, threats, intimidation, but we've never had a president doing it. We've never had a president, a nominee of one of our major parties, as we do now, you know, attempting to do it. And you see the same thing in the same way that he's treating the judiciary with, you know, the threats of violence against the family members of judges, the threats against, you know, people who will be witnesses in these trials. It just all combines to tell you that he believes he's above the law and he's willing to tear the country apart if it you know, helps him seize power again.
Well, first of all, you would have expected that the lessons that we learned with COVID, as well as the lessons on the baby food shortage, would have led our various government agencies to say we need to be able to collect better data, look at trends in data, identify threats before they become severe. But that hasn't happened to the degree I'd like to see it. So with regards to the so-called bird flu, we have the Department of Agriculture that's doing some work. We have the CDC, which is doing some work, and other agencies as well. But the coordination of their data gathering has not been as extensive as I'd like to see it. They haven't been able to communicate yet to the American people that they're fully on top of this terrible condition. And as a result, a lot of people are frightened. And fear, of course, can create challenges and harms to American people. So, you know, I want to see the federal government come back to us with a complete report on what they're doing to make sure that we're gathering the information we need from ranches, from states, from communities across the country, to make sure that that any threat from bird flu has been identified early enough that we can prevent it from a spread or, heaven forbid, entering into our food system.
Well, should that worst case scenario happen and this virus mutates in a way that facilitates easy transmission among people, are you confident America is ready to deal with another outbreak or pandemic again? There's still a lot of people who remember COVID-19. They don't want to wear masks. They're understandably, in some cases, critical of the way government intervenes there. So how do you feel about America's readiness for the next one, whenever that comes?
Well, I would anticipate that we'd be a lot more ready than we were last time around. At the beginning of any kind of pandemic, of course, people don't know exactly how it spread. They don't know how they can prevent themselves from catching it. And so basically it's, belt and suspenders. Everybody tries everything. Some things turn out over time to be more effective than others. I do believe that with regards to a viral epidemic of some kind, that the vaccination experience that we had with COVID will provide insights for the development of vaccines for something that would come along. I don't think that's going to happen with bird flu. I certainly hope it isn't going to happen. I just want to make sure that we're gathering the information early enough and on a sufficiently comprehensive basis that we don't make the kinds of mistakes that were made in the early days of COVID. I mean, we remember being told, hey, everything's fine, only 5 people have it, this isn't going to go any further. That kind of misinformation obviously caught us flat-footed in a lot of ways. I think the American people are more prepared and more willing to trust their own instincts.
Senator Mitt Romney, thank you so much for talking to us here on Inside Utah Politics, and we hope to see you again soon. Thanks so much.
I find it hard to understand an argument that suggests that we would not stand with a sovereign nation, that we have committed to help support their sovereignty. We agreed to do that back in the 1990s when they gave up their nuclear weapons. For us to walk away from that and to walk away from the defense of freedom strikes me as being a very bad miscalculation on the part of our nation if we were to do that, in part because we do well in a world where there is freedom and democracy and where people can buy our goods and services. We've done well as a nation over the last 25, 30, 40 years, and walking away from like-minded people would be a mistake.
Well, you're on the Foreign Relations Committee. You watch these international events happening all the time. You're briefed by experts. I'm curious about your opinion here. There's an expected Russian offensive this summer. Are you concerned about how Ukraine might perform then?
Well, there's no question but that Ukraine is going up against a massive superpower. And is an underdog. There's no question about that. I think a lot of people, even in our own government, felt that Ukraine would collapse in the first few days of the Russian invasion. But they have performed extraordinarily well. Their leadership was strong. Their people were determined and courageous. And all they're asking for from us is the weaponry that in many respects we promised we'd provide. And it's in America's interest to see Vladimir Putin get the message. You can't invade your neighbors. And if you do invade, there'll be consequence. I can't tell you that the battlefield will be won by Ukraine, but I can tell you that if we were to shrink from providing support to a nation that wants to defend itself, then no nation in the world would believe us anymore. And Russia would invade their neighbor, another neighbor, Poland, a NATO nation. We'd be committed at that point to send in troops to help defend Poland, other NATO nations that Putin might invade. So keeping our own troops out of harm's way is a high priority.